Certainly looking like a good one to me. Thank you so much, Jackie. We are going to be jumping straight into the game here. Now, we are on Chalet. I'm sure we'll go through the veto inside of one of the rounds if we get a little bit of downtime here just to figure out how we ended up in this predicament. But like we've said, Team 1 versus Furia. The ban's already coming on in. That's your book, Wamai, and the final ban to be decided.
Unsurprising that the Buck has made its way back in. If you think back to the last game that Team 1 played, that was against Liquid, they also target banned Buck against them because of Alamau's proficiency on playing that operator. Goyo is going to be the last one in there, just taking his place. This is a ban that we see quite a lot in this region, I think is fair to say. So, yeah, not too crazy because I suppose some of it is, you know, that targeted ban. But, you know, Thatcher, Goyo, Wamai, those are a bit more standard.
And the Goyo ban certainly makes a lot of sense, particularly when we start thinking about Chalet as a map and how we've seen it play, because there's so much use for those deployable shields, and it was something that Furia were very hot on, is the Vulcan shields being played inside of the piano area back when we saw them play against Black Dragons on this map. So I really enjoy how we're now getting to the point in the season where there's counter bans coming on in, where Alamau is obviously too good at Book, and he constantly, poor old Alamau, gets a little bit nerfed here on the server. But likewise from Team 1, reading into the fact that Furia did play those Goyo shields very heavily back when we saw them play BD over, I think in week 3. And that really starts to, you know, add a little bit of a storyline to these teams that, you know, Furia is now a dangerous team and they're getting counterbanned against you.
I think it's well worthwhile. You know, Furia, their performance against Black Dragons when they played against them on Chalet was significantly better than Black Dragons' by the end. That's what afforded them the win on this map. And so they want to do what they can to obviously push forward their advantage on the map as well. After all, Team 1, having watched that VOD, will have a much better idea of the sorts of things that Furia did to make it work for them. One of the things was, especially on their attack, the fact that they were so coordinated in being able to achieve multiple directions in their attack. I'm thinking the way, especially when they attacked onto Bar, which isn't this site that's being visited, but when they attacked onto Bar, they very specifically, you know, would come in through multiple different directions on the top floor. I'm thinking solarium, I'm thinking bathroom window, I'm thinking the big master window, really putting a ton of pressure onto piano and flushing it out very quickly. Team 1 will have a much better understanding of that, so whatever they can do to make that stronger for them, Furia will allow themselves to push forward.
Gentle start to this round. Of course, control still being vied for here, as top floor is pretty much a necessity to take when you're going to be trying to attack into a kitchen. Levy's going to be up the stairs inside of that area, looking to just keep some sort of presence there. I think that's the Cade Electroclaw getting destroyed. That's probably going to call now Rare to get himself in on the ace. Levy knows that all this is going on, and he's kind of wondering about playing aggressively there, consciously watching the angle. It's a gentle dance so far between these two players. Furia aren't moving too quickly, though, and time could start to hurt them.
Yeah, over the half the round has been expended, and Levy continues to get aggressive. One thing that's really worth bearing in mind as well is that Team 1, actually have 3 of the top 10 players for entry in Brazil. That's Alamau, Leskin, and Levy. So they are way more likely to be getting these opening kills, but still that's not been yet achieved by either of these two teams in this round.
Pressure is seriously mounted now as Levy is going to get taken out there by Lender. We could see the utility just falling by the wayside as he lost his position. 40 seconds left, and Furia can now start to draw their attention elsewhere. I imagine Highs is going to get himself in and try and make some holes in the floor. Rare with the drone underneath there, still being able to ping out utility. I'm not sure if that's a electrical that's been placed in on the basement to try and sort of electrical one of the walls off, but if so, it's a very sneaky and difficult one to deal with. The wall, however, now will be getting open. Toxic Babe canisters denying Highs access and visibility on through the site, as Alamar has yet another in his pocket. KDS comes in. Huge kill there over onto Rare, and a second. The flank is going to be hurting them now, as Highs is left with no option but to shove his way on inside, and he shoves his way into a hail of bullets. Miracle still up on the top floor. That hatch is not open, my friend. Team 1 there with the first defensive round here on Chalet.
Really slow going there from the attackers. FURIA just really struggled to get any tenacity in that round. I would imagine that they probably weren't expecting the kitchen site to be what Team 1 went for. After all, so far in professional level Rainbow Six, what we have seen here on Chalet is bar mostly be the preferred primary site. So that's what they have more experience in dealing with. Kitchen is not one that we see a ton, usually only beating out the Garage Snowmobile, Snowmobile wine cellar site down in the basement. Really showed where FURIA struggled with trying to clear out the top and the bottom floors within the allotted time that they had. And once we got to that final 30-second mark at the end, they were still trying to even get things such as that electroclaw removed. What that meant was the push that they wanted to make onto the site was entirely limited by the chokeholds that are just there in the map already. If you can't get open breaches, after all, you don't have all these lines of ingress that you can use to your advantage. You have to funnel yourselves through narrow choke points. Now, the defenders who were on that first floor and waiting by the site for FURIA to push in could just hold on to those routes in while FURIA had no choice but to take them. It put Team 1 in a much more beneficial position, and that's how KDS got that 2K, and that's how they could end up cleaning everything up. It was a really slow round from FURIA, and they paid for it.
Bit of an honourable mention to Levy in that round as well, just how much time he was able to eat up inside a Master as the, I think he was playing on the oNe last time, since switched this time to maybe a bit more of an aggressive alibi pick. Team 1 look to try and continue this bit of a defensive streak that they seem to have started for themselves. FURIA certainly needing to move a little bit quicker here in this round, and they've arguably got more obstacles that they're going to be coming up against. The oNe gates, the laser gates have seen so much play here inside of Latin America, and that's partly due to just how powerful they can be. Neskin maybe getting away with a sliver as the drone was at his feet. Highs had the call. He'd already suffered some damage earlier on in the round as well, and has now been forced all the way back to that fireplace area. Highs going to try and get an angle maybe from this K9 spot and just give Neskin another line of sight to really concern himself with.
This positioning that Neskin has actually is really reminiscent of the double mirror setup that FaZe Clan ran when they were defending against Team 1 on this site. Except the difference is while he has a shield so he can look out into the piano corridor and the top of library stairs, he's actually opened up the library wall quite soft. So he's not relying on mirror windows. He can just shoot straight in through there and use the line of sight. He doesn't also have a second player right by him, so he's a bit more alone. However, he is protected by the oNe gate in front of him, which means projectiles to clear that shield will be much harder. However, the shield at the top of library stairs will be cleared, and that means Levy has to back down. That's that really important part of the map that the attackers have to take control of if they are to make a successful push onto this site at all.
Getting towards the crunch time here for FURIA. Almar going to be inside of the site, looking maybe to make use of some of his utility there. KDS dropping down with only 1 HP. Library has now been arguably taken, but there's still utility that needs to be dealt with before players can come on in. Fancy's going to take out Neskin, as he was more preoccupied with a drone. Top floor control gained at this point, and flawlessly so far by FURIA. They have only still got 30 seconds left to execute. Rare could find himself in a bit of a pickle here as he goes for the swing. Doesn't realise there's going to be a player on either side of him. Lender has been taken down as that all-important hard breach, so that now is not an option. KDS might only be on 1 health, but this time is continuing to tick. Miracle finds a great kill there over onto KDS, however, only needing to land 1 bullet in that circumstance. Levy now playing aggressively on these library stairs, finds 1. He might find a second here. Rare, you've got to swing it. Goes for that swing and confirms the kill. 3 seconds now. Lagonis in the 1 versus 2, getting pressured heavily. Highs coming in with a wallbang shot there to lock it up for Furia. It was slow and it was steady, but they won that race.
For so much of that round, it really looked like it was going to swing into Team 1's favor, and I actually think the peak that Levy made at the end that left it down to a 1 versus 2 was incredibly detrimental for Team 1. They had so much control for a significant amount of time. Having KDS present up in the library, even that late into the round, meant that Furia's take of that part of the site was significantly slower. They had to use projectiles to get rid of the oNe gate and to try and flush him out. He dived down the hatch and we saw him lose a significant chunk of his HP in the process of doing that, but he was still alive, and that's the important part. Even then, we still had Levy present on the library stairs. That's arguably the most crucial part of this site or this map that you need to hold on to if you're doing a bar defense, and he was there for ages. It meant that what could be a arguably short piano take for Furia, because there was no real defender presence there, ended up being quite long for them to actually take control of the top floor. But Levy putting himself in harm's way at the end meant the library stairs were cleared even when it looked like Furia may not gain control of them. And in that 1 versus 2 situation directly on the site, you're automatically going to be at a huge disadvantage if you are the 1 in that situation. And in that case, it was Team 1. So Furia, even though so much of it didn't look like it was going in their favor, they managed to pull that one through and even things out. And now Team 1 are going to be heading down into the basement. It's that site that I said a lot of players or a lot of teams are not necessarily preferring. And so we don't really get to see it a ton on the few times that we actually do get to see Chalet.
I like it. I like the fact that the basement is being brought here by Team 1. I want to see what they're able to do with it, because as you say, Gio, we don't regularly see it. Now, there's similar principles that apply to attacking any site on Chalet, and that is that, you need to try and get yourself in. Vertical control can be important. Hatches can be a play for applying pressure, but your main focus is typically going to be the garage wall and then pushing in through snowmobile side and taking control of trench and looking to open in through wine. They're usually the 2 sort of ports of call here for the attackers and areas that you want to try and get some sort of control on. Now, Alamau is going to be slow peeking down the stairs, finds that entry over onto Miracle. And I'm pretty sure Miracle sat there going, why is Mute on Solarium at 1 minute 42?
Now, I didn't actually see how many air jabs were remaining for Miracle, or if he'd placed them all, but I would be very surprised if he had placed them all by that point. So that's quite a valuable loss, or valuable kill for Team 1, I should say. Fantasy just taking one in revenge, though, as Levy is removed off the map, and that's that all-important roamer, someone that we look out for those early kills especially. Not going to have the opportunity to return to the site, though, and as these hatches get opened by the Selmas, Furia are just going to be increasing their control onto the site beneath them.
Rare might be looking now at an opportunity to get that garage wall open, as with this vertical pressure, you get the opportunity to take away some of those electroclaws. Now, they're not always easy to find. Highs is going to have the job of searching them out there with these vertical angles that he's able to create here as the sledge. Now, able to operate pretty safely. Fancy maybe getting himself into a bit of a scuffle here. KDS, just on the bottom of that blue corridor, as KDS is just dipping in and out. I think the Banshee remained, despite an attempt at a breaching charge being thrown on through. Maybe an important engagement, because if Fancy wins this one, he's able then to get access to the back of the site, but the time is still continuing to tick, and KDS is doing a great job of just softly challenging it. Alamau coming in for his second kill on the round as he takes down Fancy, and the kills continue here for Team 1. Rare has got himself in. The 3 versus 2, but look, 8 seconds remaining. Diffuser now cold, just next to that snowmobile, and Highs is left to push his way on through once again. Can he find the kills required? It looks as though he might. Gets the down. He was so close on that wall bang. We can see the silhouettes, Highs. We know just how close you were, but for that round, it will go to Team 1 out on time.
Red desperately tried to get down the diffuser, and he was doing that in the position that was just in front of the garage door. However, it's a really tentative position to try and plant if you don't have control of, you know, wine, for example. But the most notable place that I'm thinking of is the blue corridor. If you don't have control of blue, which is where KDS was playing, not only do you lack control of blue stairs, most likely, but you can also watch both sites from that position. You can move around into the wine cellar as well as holding LOS into the garage as well, and the main stairs too. It's such a powerful position for defenders to have, and at no point was KDS removed from that position. We did see pressure come down the blue stairs onto him, but that wasn't a 1v1 that was won either way, really. I think until the very end, because the player who was doing it was very tentative, so KDS didn't get the kill for himself. But the kill certainly wasn't landed on KDS. And that meant that Highs and Rare had to desperately try and furrow for it at the end. But at that point, when you're waning in time to that extent, defenders don't have to get aggressive onto you. And when there's 2 of them who are still alive, especially looking directly onto you, chances are you aren't going to win. A lot of desynchronization, I think, from FURIA in that round, because even though they had the right idea, and they got a couple of decent kills early on, especially that one onto Levy, which is what you would immediately think of when thinking, we have to clear above. After that, just the different players on FURIA seemed to be at different points in their push, and it didn't match up when they needed it.
And the most important kill in that last round was Alamal's opener onto Miracle, because that then allowed him to make a further rotation to take down Fantasy on the library stairs because of the air jabs being taken out of the way. So you can't give a team like Team 1 that much room, and there must have been some sort of a drone or something that could have been positioned to try and protect that a little bit further, because if that engagement then gets won, if Fantasy is successful on attacking KDS down on that blue corridor, the whole push changes then, and it becomes very doable, even in a short amount of time. But that was last round, and we are now into round number 4. Looking up toward this master bedroom area once again. Interesting placement there of the Suri gate. A little bit of the wall shot out just to allow a line of sight. Put a laser gate on it so that you're not going to be able to get naded or any throwable coming on through, but quite in contrast to the previous, the wall has been opened exceptionally quickly here, Gio.
Well, this is the thing. FURIA need to be a lot faster and a lot more decisive when attacking onto Kitchen this time, because when they were attacking onto it back in round 1, it was their pacing that let them down. Nice kill from Levy onto Lender, his former teammate from Singularity, sent straight into the dirt, but Rare is ready to take that control back. He gets the trade, and it's a 4 versus 4 at this point. What I was saying before is FURIA were very slow once they took that upstairs control before, and it was the downstairs with which they seriously struggled. And now we're in the final minute of the round. The question I have is, are they going to have that trouble again? Miracle's still watching up on the top floor, and there are defenders up on the top floor still. But FURIA are going to have to push onto the site at some point as well. It just seems like members of Team 1 are all around the map right now.
FURIA are doing a poor job here of rounding up these players on the side of Team 1 and arguably giving them too much room here. Once again, we find ourselves in another round where we're hitting that 25-second mark before we've seen a great deal of action. KDS, ooh, I thought he was going to get caught out there, but he will live to fight another day. He's going to instead get the peek over there. Miracle, sit down. You've just been taken out of commission. Lagonis, he's going to find a kill onto Fantasy. KDS in the 1 versus 2, as kills did come from FURIA when pushing that site. This plan is now going to be confirmed, and KDS has a bit of a tough task ahead of him because the wall didn't get opened. Is now essentially attacking through the same lines as the attackers were. Single doorways, a small breach here or there, but nothing significant to give him any sort of info. KDS then going to get caught out inside of the air jab, really giving the game away. He's left pre-firing desperately, trying to get this kill here. But even if he finds the kill over onto Rare, he knows that Highs is still waiting for him. And all the while, the time is continuing to tick. Rare going to be holding that long angle and finding the final kill. He got the plant as well. He's hitting the triple there in terms of contribution for his side. FURIA make it stick there in the last 25 seconds.
It's a perfect example of how it can go wrong for the defenders if they do take the gamble to keep their roamers out on the roam that late into the round. While it can be super valuable because you can cause problems to the attackers later on and really hold them off from being able to make a plant, if they do successfully plant, suddenly you are in their situation and you're watching from the other side of the glass. You have to try and rotate back onto a site that your team no longer control, and you have to push in onto it. And if you haven't specifically set up well for a post plant so that you can retake it, suddenly there's trouble. One of the things that you spoke about, Ollie, was the fact that FURIA didn't open the wall, which meant that KDS couldn't use any of those lines of sight to his advantage because they didn't exist. He opted not to play vertically, so he couldn't use holes in the floor above the site, for example, to try and kill the attackers from above. He had to try and attack onto them laterally through a doorway. That's really difficult, especially when there's two of them and they're holding a crossfire. He was basically in an impossible situation at that point, and it was something that can be blamed, or Team 1 can be blamed for, because of how late they left their roamers out on the field.
It was a good push from FURIA in the end, but again, it comes down to this brute force aspect that they seem to be not relying on, but having to resort to. Maybe a better way of saying it. And that's not something that you can rely on every single time to work and for it to pull off for you. FURIA just need to find themselves a little bit more time. If they're just spending a long time chasing down these ghosts that Team 1 are sort of leaving behind for them. Once again, we can see a very spread team of defenders there. Just a nice little view of all the little blue outlines. I believe we've Levy downstairs in the basement. We've got people upstairs in the library. Alamau's dropping down into the basement as well. They're really flexing this whole map and using every rotation that they can. And there are a lot of them available here on New Chalet.
The really key thing here is assuming that Miracle doesn't go down early. I want to see how much that influences this round in comparison to what we saw before. Miracle, on the Nomad, he was taken down early back in round number 3, which is when they were defending Snow, and that meant the rotations were really easy to make for the defenders later on. Those rotations have to remain open for them even on this site as well. Now, also remember there was a big mistake made by Levy before, where even though he retained control of the library stairs until, let's see, the last 20 seconds of the round, him getting aggressive and peeking late on lost that for them right at the last second. It put FURIA in a 2 versus 1 situation in which they had the advantage. A nice jump out from KDS catches Rare off, but Lender's the one carrying the diffuser this time, so that's not going to be gone. It's just those exothermic charges.
And as we've seen, FURIA don't necessarily rely on those exothermic charges because they often get themselves into a position where they can't really be used. So it is a loss, but we have seen them do... Well, we have seen them clutch around, should I say, without the use of any sort of hard destruction. This isn't going to be easy for them, though. We've still got Neskin on this fireplace just outside a library, playing the shield, and everyone will be waiting for these Aruni gates to get burnt so that we can at least attempt to try and get rid of that deployable shield. But Neskin has a bit of surety to peek now. The cover of the smoke wasn't quite enough, though. Lender taking advantage. Really good team play by FURIA there, and an interesting use of smoke. We often think that smoke is reserved for plants, but that was a nice little push in that was able to be done due to that cover. Fancy going to find a kill over onto Levy. Highs, what are you doing? KDS gets taken down. Miracle with the good information and the hop in. But once again, 10 seconds remain. Alamau, a dangerous factor here on these library stairs. He's going to get peeked now by Fantasy as he gets caught looking into the abyss. Lagonis 1 versus 4. Not a lot of health. Can he get the kill onto the planter? That would be huge! Yes, he can! Headshot from Lagonis onto Lender. And despite a huge man count advantage, Team 1 take that round.
gut-wrenching there for FURIA, given how improved their strategy on the attack was that round. We had really coordinated plays coming in from them. At every point, people were working together. Having the smoke in front of the library hall so that Neskin couldn't get the line of sight that he needed and control that route in from Piano, that was really well done. Neskin was forced into a more aggressive situation where he pushed up in front of the shield to try and catch out those players, but got caught out himself. Then what we saw in library, there was a defender who was present in there, and even though Highs narrowly missed him, you had another player, I think it was Fantasy, who was ready to just jump in through the library window. Oh, it might have been Miracle, actually, I'm sorry. Who was ready to just jump in straight through the library window and take that player out. So at every point, FURIA were working together. And then, as I mentioned, Fantasy, the thing with him is that he has been playing very, very well in terms of the way he's been going with entry, the way he's been going with catching out players from Team 1, getting the kills that he needs to get. I mean, bear in mind, Fantasy is one of the youngest players in all of Brazil right now. March 2003, I think, is when his birthday was. So he's only narrowly old enough to play in the BR6 right now, and he's really showing up for the team. But really gut-wrenching at the end there for them, the fact that it was just that last play from Team 1 to get the kill onto the planter, and with such a narrow time margin allowed for FURIA to take the round. That's all they needed. Team 1 just needed to get that one kill to flip things over to the 0-0 mark and win the round. Otherwise, everything was going FURIA's way.
And it's a shame because you could argue that it's the smoke canister that kind of caused the death in some way, because if that smoke canister hadn't been there, then we maybe not been able to see, you know, any sort of line of sight be able to be sort of snuck on through, and the attackers could have defended instead of just sort of wandering in through the smoke. So real good stuff from Team 1, and to be honest, good stuff from FURIA. They're not lagging behind by any stretch of the imagination. 3-2 here on Chalet is still very competitive, and they've got all the chance in the world to take this to an even 3-3 split, which I'm sure that they will be happy about, despite a couple of the rounds maybe being a bit closer than the scoreboard would suggest. They're going to be attacking upstairs. We've seen this take some time and some coordination in terms of dealing with these Electroclaws. Fancy going to get himself in underneath, looking for some sort of confirmation that that Electroclaw has been destroyed. He has the line of sight now, but this can often be the tricky part, is actually seeing where that Electroclaw is, and he's going to use another breaching round just to try and figure that out. Does find room on the left panel. Wall can get open now, nice and early in comparison to where we've seen it done previously.
You see Levy backing off into the bathroom from his position in Piano, but also having to watch onto the bathroom window because they know that any could come swinging through at any moment. And that is something that FURIA have definitely shown that they like to do in the past. As it stands, all of the defenders are still alive and can still help one another out as the attack is made, but the importance of that wall being open cannot be understated. Also can't be understated, however, is the little time that is remaining. Another round where FURIA have seriously taken their time. Finally, the shield from Piano is removed, and you can tell that Levy knows that there is action to be coming through.
Toxic Babe Canister's going to deny the push, and with all those vertical holes opened earlier by Fancy, it could be dangerous to push on in, but Rare is going to give it a shot nonetheless. It looks like he's going to confirm that plant as Highs eats a C4, but nobody on the side of Team 1 at all confused about where that plant has gone down. Highs is going to find one over onto Lagonis, but is it going to be impactless? Still players downstairs looking to try and make their way on up. Miracle finds a kill over onto Alamau. KDS still playing inside a Piano, gets one onto Fantasy. 20 seconds left remain, and the site is being held now long by Highs and Rare. They're going to find the last two kills. A ballsy plant there by FURIA, but it pays off.
Definitely ballsy. The positioning of the defenders suggested that FURIA may be in a more tentative position than they would like to be. You still had players who were alive over on that, you know, the site side of the map, as well as Alamount down below. Valkyrie. Not only was he holding line of sight through a soft wall that had been set up for him in dining, but, you know, when you're playing with a C4, it's nice to have that position down below that you can use against the attackers. Highs was the only player who was providing any pressure to that side of the map. We didn't have anyone coming in through Solarium. No one was pressuring bathroom window. Highs on the master window, you were there, but, you know, his tendency to keep moving away meant that there wasn't a ton of pressure actually being applied onto the defender who was in there. So the fact that FURIA did go for the plant was a gamble, and it was a gamble that paid off. Team 1 couldn't deal with the onslaught once they were actually in, and that meant that the half ended at 3-3. Interesting round, or round count, I should say as well, given that Chalet is a little bit known for, you know, being kind of frag heavy, but FURIA being on the attack. For most maps, that's still a disadvantage. And what we have to consider as well is that FURIA's game against Team Liquid from the last playday went significantly worse for them than most people expected. And that's something they need to bounce back from. If they don't win this game against Team 1, who knows what's going to do that? Wow. Who knows what that is going to do for their mentality and where that's going to put them, because they will have dropped down from 3rd, way further down in the leaderboard. KDS getting the opening kill onto Fantasy certainly isn't going to help with that either, as FURIA head into their first round on defense, just 4 men alive.
Not an ideal start. Not sure where Fancy was to get peaked, if he got unlucky or if he was actually going for some sort of early aggression, trying to get that upper hand and be unpredictable. As it stands, it's going to hurt his team slightly, but they're going to be happy. 3-3 on the defense is a decent split. It's a good split for any map as an attacker, as typically you are expected to convert more rounds on the defense. What can Team 1 do here? Are they going to be quicker than FURIA? Time at the moment would suggest not, as we've seen a minute. They have got a kill, but aside from that, we're still yet to really see any significant presence inside of the map from these attackers. Fancy got taken out there at the K9 window, so there's an argument for a little bit of a spawn peek there and just got taken out. So probably best to leave those in the scrims for the time being, as Team 1 are going to be pretty versed with dealing with that. KDS now inside a wide. A peek comes through. Oh, rare catching Lagonis out. I think Lagonis panicked through a Selma then, Gio.
Yeah, I mean, I saw there was, who was it, KDS, who was also down there, who turned his back on the stairs, and I saw Rare kind of creeping, and I was like, oh, someone's gonna die. Definitely, Lagonis had not been handed any information to suggest that there was someone there, I don't think. It looked like it took him somewhat by surprise. Levy, the next one to fall. That's for Team 1, who now only have a minute remaining to attack onto the site.
We have seen what a lack of time does to teams as well, and FURIA suffered it equally on their attack. I think there's just a lot of places that these defenders can hide here on Chalet, and so much utility to try and wade on through. Alamau almost hot breaching there onto Lender. A C4 toss is going to go through from Rare, but it isn't going to find anybody. KDS still dishing out the damage, though. Inside a sight, finds himself 2. Gets downed by Miracle, but Miracle was in an impossible spot. His location called out. Lagonis, 1 health or not, is going to be more than happy to swing in and pre-fire onto that one. Finding the kill for Team 1 and their first successful attacking round.
Look, it wasn't the cleanest round for Team 1. It wasn't always the most coordinated at times, but it was the perfect example of the merits of a brute force. That kill onto Alamau definitely kind of made me laugh, just because of, I don't think he was expecting it. But I mean, even just seeing them as they were moving towards the site at the end, we talk about the importance of the library stairs, right? There's usually a player playing at the top of the library stairs, hidden behind a shield. Did you see what Team 1 did? They just vaulted it. They vaulted the hell out of that shield. They just chased him down. It was brilliant because it's not something that you see very frequently. And the interesting part about that as well is that, you know, when I look back in my notes and I have a look at the way Team 1 have played over the last few weeks and what's really notable about their playstyle, one of the things I've written is for the most part, good individual play, just not always great at coordinating. And if you know that that's where your strengths are, now by all means, you definitely need to improve on the coordination. You can't just rely on not having great coordination. And it's not that they're terrible, it's that it lets them down at times. But they really lent into their strengths in that round. They knew that they could play aggressive, they knew that they could get those kills, and they did. They all relied on their individual skills to push in a way that we don't typically see here on Chalet, and it absolutely paid off. Most likely took FURIA by surprise as well. And that gives FURIA all the more to think about, because, you know, they're going to be defending down in the basement now. How are Team One going to approach this? Are they going to be equally as aggressive? Do FURIA need to be even more vigilant for where these springs of attackers could come forth without them realizing? It's certainly going to keep them on their toes.
Lendo, he's got himself into a bit of a viper's nest there upstairs, as we can see all the drones coming in around him. There's Levy looking to just check out the bottom of West Main area. Bit of double drone in here from Team 1 as well, as we get the idea that Kitchen's clear from defenders. Oh, was that a missed drone, or was that just some very smart play? Looks as though Lendo could be unaccounted for here, and Fantasy as well. While the drones have come on through and passed, I'm not sure if Team 1 fully know that there are two players playing upstairs. And it makes sense to play two, because then you've got the ability to try and get a trade-off. Now, if Team 1 assume that that top floor is clear and just carry on with their attack here onto the garage, it could hurt them somewhat. Levy's air jabs are going to be pretty crucial. Rare there, just trying to bait somebody down, as he knows he's got a bit of support on the library stairs as well. KDS now approaching onto Trench. I think that Team 1 have maybe done a bit of misdroning, but I'm not sure how much it's going to hurt them here.
Well, you never know, because they could just find that brute forcing would work for them again. In go the smokes as they get opening onto that trench wall. Miracle's just watching through the breach, knowing that there's players behind the soft wall ahead. This is where FURIA are going to start to feel the pressure onto them as all of these avenues are around them. Another Selma just to add things on. That will allow KDS to move on through when he wants to. And FURIA positioning just ahead of them, ready for a push.
Lagonis going to try and confirm this plant with all 10 players still alive on the server. He is going to come off it momentarily, but Neskin's going huge elsewhere. Toxic Babe canisters, they aren't in the right place. And at the moment, they are lacking your line of sight. They are blocking your line of sight, sorry. Miracle is left in the 1 versus 4. Once again, it seems to be poor old Miracle here in these impossible situations on the defense. The smoke canisters didn't do anything to stop that plant from going down. Now he's frozen. He doesn't know what to do. He's no information. He's going for peeks. He finds one. He finds two. Can he find some cover? No. Alamar with the shots in the back. For a moment, it looked like it could have been the clutch of the year, but Alamar says, not on my watch.
I mean, there was absolutely no way, I think, that he was going to be able to get the 1 versus 4, but even just getting those 2 kills took me so much by surprise. I didn't expect him to get both of them, and I really commend the fact that he decided to go for it. I want to hark back to something that was brought up earlier on in the round, and that is a comment that you made, Ollie, saying ignoring those defenders upstairs could be a problem later. But something that we've seen a lot throughout this game so far is that it isn't necessarily always a problem. In fact, we've seen it work out. I'm thinking back to when KDS was the lone roamer who then had to try and push on a post plant on a kitchen defense. Now, that is almost exactly what happened in that round. It wasn't that there was a post plant that they had to try and deal with and didn't know how. It's that the attackers very quickly dealt with the players who were still upstairs after the plant had been made. And it was as those defenders decided to take the opportunity to push in behind the attackers, try and catch them out as they moved in towards the site. It didn't work. Team 1 were ready for it, and they got those players. That's what left Miracle on his own at the end. And that was really good diligence from Team One, I would say. The fact that they were expecting a push like that and that they could so effectively deal with it, that's not something you see every day. And it's absolutely a testament to how individually skilled Team One are and how much they are paying attention, even if they're not necessarily dealing with those things early in the round like you might expect.
And a big factor was the Nomad still being alive and the air jabs being placed out there, and it kind of just throws the gauntlet down and says, yeah, we kind of know you're upstairs, but we're gonna, we're gonna make you come back to the site because we've seen an in and we've found that, yeah, you have left the site a little bit light of defense, so we're gonna try and take advantage of it that way. And for that round, it worked for Team One. It's one round closer to a match point here, as they've looked very good on their defensive phase so far. FURIA yet to really show us anything. Gives us an indication that they can consistently pick rounds up here, as we've seen them flit between the different bomb sites. They're now back downstairs in kitchen, looking for this sort of extended hold once again. We've not seen FURIA defend upstairs, and I'm wondering if it's down to the lack of Goyo, Gio, because it was an operator that they relied on so heavily. Maybe without so many of those shields, we can see that Fancy's got a shield here on the piano, but we've seen them hold it much heavier than that in the past.
Yeah, I think it was FURIA who went in for the whole, like, 3 shields in piano type deal. It made them have such strong control over bathroom and master, which obviously surround that area as well as looking out towards, where, outside of library stairs, forward from the position where Fantasy was looking that we just saw. So definitely having fewer of those shields available is affecting the way that FURIA are wanting to play. And it's really influencing that. You can hear breaches being made upstairs as Lender is still sneaking around down below. We've seen a lot of this come out, playing the Valkyrie downstairs from wherever the site is, and you have the C4 that you can use, and it also means that you can watch out for any of the anti-roam that has definitely been sent out on all of the floors in these various rounds. It's really important that that happens as well on a map that's as big as Chalet. You see it mostly on these big maps for sure.
Lagonis is itching to get himself on into sight, as he's got plenty of opportunities to get himself in. Miracle with the Toxic Babe canisters. This time, are they going to be hitting? Well, it looks like they are, but the smoke is also hitting from Lagonis. He's going to maybe find himself a little bit of an off-site plant spot, as he is now going to get sent all the way ring around the rosy. Lender comes in with a C4, as it was a very unsure ball there from the side of Team One. They didn't know where they wanted to try and get the plant down, and FURIA just kept restricting their options. 1 second's going to tick by, but all the kills come in before that happens. Big cleanup there from FURIA and a much needed defensive round.
I mean, I would argue that it is almost unforgivable that all 5 members of FURIA were still alive for as long as they were. Highs got taken down right at the very last second in that round, but other than that, FURIA survived the hell out of that round. So much of their aggression was pushed onto Team One, and Team One just couldn't do anything back in return. And FURIA really needed that as well, because the rounds were starting to slip away from them. And as I mentioned before, they need to have a competitive game here, at least to stay in that mentally. They don't want to fall from top 3 down into the mid-table, maybe even down into the bottom 4 at some point, because that's really hard to get back from. It's really hard to keep telling yourself that you deserve to be there at the top when you're now losing to teams that are in the mid-table. And there's absolutely a part of it that comes down to Team One's improvement. Don't forget, of course, that this is a team that were kind of just mishmashed together. When all of the roster changes were made in Brazil, we had the MIBR roster move to FaZe. The Team One roster moved to MIBR, which meant that Team One had to kind of scramble around and put together a bunch of players from various teams to build their own roster for this BR6 season. So this is still a team that's relatively fresh and new, and the likelihood is you will be seeing improvement from them every single week and every single playday. And that means that from one week to the next, it's hard to judge where they compare to other teams without first seeing it happen. So even though you can turn around and say, well, you know, FURIA, they're having a tough time against this mid-table team of Team 1, by the end of Stage 2, Stage 3, Team 1 could be a top-of-the-table team. We just don't know that yet. Either way, that's not how FURIA will be feeling. They'll be feeling, God damn, we need to be doing better. We know we can.
FURIA now choosing to come upstairs. Real almost last-ditch bomb site it feels, though they've done everything they can to avoid it up until now. They're going to be trying to hold vertically. He's conscious of a push coming in underneath. He's going to get pinged out on the drone, though, so kind of needs to watch himself now, as that drone's going to continue all the way up into Solarium. Team 1... got 2 people on side of this rappel, and I think we just saw a hop in as well. Miracle's got pings that he's trying to work off, as more drone work needs to be done inside of this kitchen area to find out these defenders that are going to be roaming there. Rare's had to drag himself back a little bit, and he's got himself a bit closer to the piano. KDS once again setting that drone up for a little bit of flank watch and just make sure that no one's playing vertically, but all the players from the side of FURIA have made that switch. They've rotated back up and are now occupying that space of piano.
Nice opening kill from Miracle onto Levy. Miracle's been that player who's been left alone at the end a couple of times for FURIA. Playing the hard support here as he's on the smoke. He'll be expected to survive a long time throughout the round. He knows he's been droned out as well, but wants to ensure he prioritizes his positioning. Down goes his shield as the breach is made. That's going to give him that extra protection when holding onto the site.
It's strange to see a push coming from the Solarium side. We very seldom see it, and I think, in fact, in LATAM up until this point, we haven't seen a push come from this direction. So Team 1 really trying to keep FURIA on the toes here and say, we're going to push you from either side. We don't really care. Rare's found himself downed. He may be able to get revived here as he's got multiple players. In fact, everyone on the side of FURIA has gone to his aid and maybe leaving the site a bit light. But no, Miracle with the swing. Gets traded out pretty much instantly, but the Selma will stick. Oh, upside down repel kill there from Lender. You don't get to see that all too often. A C4 as well. Final kill, Fantasy. FURIA holding on.
Wow, it was like Rare getting injured was the first domino. By the end, FURIA were just like, no, none of this. I'm sorry, going completely down, collapse straight in on the push that Team 1 were making. And I think really notable there, for example, getting the upside down repel kill onto Alamau. He's playing on the IQ from the master window. It might seem like, you know, just a kill, but it was a really impactful kill because that was a really important crossfire that was being held to protect the plant that was going down in the site. Because the plant's not being made in office, they came in through Solarium, they're making the plant in the master site instead. That's a really, really important crossfire to hold because the defenders are going to have to traverse it in order to get to that point. Getting rid of Alamau there suddenly opens up all that space to the defenders, and they essentially have free reign to push up on the plant that's being made. All of the attackers who are then trying to hold off on that, which at that point was only one other attacker there for support, can't hold every route in from Solarium because it's just one side of the map. There's no central map control. So that gave FURIA everything they needed to push up, and having the C4 come as well from who was it who brought the C4? Was it Lender? Yeah, from Lender down
Lender
below
had a massive
to
round.
yeah, I was thinking it was Lender, but I just wanted to be sure. Either way, that C4 huge to deny the plant. FURIA really opened things up there in what seemed like it could have swung either way, and now back on even footing in the scoreboard.
Might be a while until we see a Solarium side push come through for Master again. For this round at least, we're going to turn our attention toward Bar. FURIA have done really well here to level it up to 5-5. That was a much needed round for them. And the question now is asked of Team 1. Is this brute force strategy that you're going for going to continue to work? Because some of the gunners on the side of FURIA are really coming alive now. We mentioned Lender. He had a massive round back in round number 10. Just 1 round to go. Fantasy as well, picking up some kills. Ooh, the guy's on fire, Gio. Finds a narrow headshot, threads the eye of the needle over onto KDS. And speaking of big fraggers, KDS is one of the big fraggers on the side of Team 1.
Yeah, really, really valuable kill, I would say, from that. Now, can FURIA continue it on? Whoever wins this next round is going to be awarded with match point, and then after that, of course, it's just a toss-up as to whether or not... is the C4 going to catch him out? Oh, he DBNOs him. Is Neskin going to be able to crawl away and receive any help? Alamau got a kill at the same time onto Rare. Gon is trying to watch onto the window, but instead will be seeking his way actually into the map itself. It does look like Neskin is going to be helped up.
We've seen what happens when players get revived, Gio. Could this be a dangerous switch that has been flipped for Team 1 now? Are they just going to go
primal mode
nuclear again? They've got a bit of stuff to wade through. They've got some Surya gates, some barbed wire. It isn't all going to be plain sailing, as they've still not really vied for control of this library area, or even more importantly, the library stairs area. High still playing behind that deployable shield. It's a horrible sort of head glitch situation, because as an attacker looking at that, you're going to get very little indication that someone is in fact playing behind that shield. Highs has since dipped off, revoking that power position instead to try and make sure that his flank is being cleared. Fantasy could be an unknown factor here inside of library itself, as a hop-in looks imminent from Alamau, maybe waiting for some intel. Fantasy's going to be playing things patiently. There's only 25 seconds left, and all he really needs here is 1 kill. He's going to find at least a down. He had intel on a second, but Lagonis comes in with the trade. Now we're going to see Alamau get revived, but 15 seconds, is that going to be enough? It could be a hot hatch drop here coming into the site. Lender, he's framing himself up for a big final 8 seconds, as he doesn't really know which way to look. Drops the diffuser. That's a huge one. Is he going to be able to pick the second as well? Really playing ring around the rosy here, but Alamau comes in with a kill over onto Lender. It is not going to be enough. Time steps in, and FURIA, they are the first team to get themselves on a match point here tonight on Chalet.
You know, by the time we entered into round number 9, it looked like it was in potentially dire straits for FURIA. It was a 5-3, and now they've pulled things back in their favor. Now, this could, of course, go into overtime, which will give Team 1 a couple of war flashbacks compared to their game with FaZe Clan, which also went into overtime, and they narrowly lost. Team 1 have been playing exceptionally well, and to lose it at this final hurdle would certainly hurt a lot, but this is the momentum that FURIA needed. And even then, Team 1 had some great positioning and situations in that last round. You know, especially when Alamau was preparing to jump into library and Fantasy was in there, there was no one else from Team 1 on the other library window to make the pinch with Fantasy. To all intents and purposes, Fantasy could have absolutely gotten that kill onto Alamau. But that was when those other players from Team 1 appeared outside the door and were ready to make the trade. It's this positioning and ability to trade that Team 1 exhibited that made things look like it was strongly in their favor. I mean, even at the end, when Lender was behind the bar, he got that first kill onto whomever it was who was carrying the diffuser, and as he started to rotate around the bar looking for a second kill, you had a player from Team 1 come in through the other side of the room and catch Lender out from behind. I honestly think that if maybe there had been a bit more time on the clock at that point, maybe Team 1 would have been able to keep up with the coordination and actually got a more definitive end to FURIA. But because FURIA had time on their side and just as many men alive, they had the room to be a bit more aggressive. Oh, come on, Levy! Lender's right there, and he's been doing good on the entry as well. That's not good for Team 1.
Dear oh dear. We often see Levy falling in that early engagement. I don't know if it's the curse of the Nomad, as Miracle had a bit of trouble with it when he was playing on the side of FURIA on the attack just a handful of rounds ago. That's giving FURIA a big swing here into this match point round. A lot of work to do, and when you haven't got surety of your flanks, it does make things a little bit more dangerous. Team One are going to have to try and take control of this top floor, as we've seen be the way when attacking anywhere onto either kitchen or master bedroom. It's almost the same attack for the most part. Alamau getting himself underneath, going to be able to remove that electrical with IQ's gadget. Lagonis can now get the wall open nice and safely from the outside. Fancy just forced back a little bit. It isn't too much to worry about. The pressure really isn't mounting yet from Team One. And there's an argument to say they haven't really got the man count to be putting that pressure on.
It's quite difficult as well, as this is a site that has proven to be quite hard to substantially attack within the time restraints. A lot of these teams will get the top floor open nice and quickly, which Team One have at this point. But as soon as you want to move down onto opening up dining is when it gets hard. That's why we've seen these teams actually forego that opportunity. But here are the Selmas being put onto the site. It looks like the shield just above them, or just ahead of them, is also going to be destroyed as well by the Ash Breach charge. This could really facilitate Team One making a successful push in. They just have to deal with the fact that all 5 men of Furia are still alive.
We saw a very similar plant situation come into fruition the last time we saw this site as well. Rare with a nice bullet hole kill onto Lagonis, but not before 1 kill had been found onto Lender. Rare's going to continue to put some damage in as Neskin takes a boatload of damage. He has the diffuser in hand as well, so he's unlikely to be able to get a plant down with so little hit points remaining. Miracle has still got some Toxic Babe canisters that we're seeing put out now as well, as KDS is just wiggling his way on in. Alamau takes a chunk. Alamau also finds the kill over onto Miracle. That could be quite big there. There is a live ping onto the planter. Rare, get your pre-fire on. You need to try and take KDS out. No, it's going to be a retake. KDS comes off that plant and immediately gets himself into a gunfight with Highs, which he loses. 2 versus 2, and we can draw a little bit of the momentum out of this, as Rare and Highs are both going to take a moment to breathe. They recognize they've got quite a bit of time, and if we look at Neskin and Alamau, there isn't a great deal of health remaining on their bodies. However, on the flip side, Furia, they're not too healthy either. Rare and Highs both sitting less than half. Neskin going to find one over onto Rare. It's unfortunate that Furia weren't able to break those down, and with 11 seconds left, it's unlikely that we're going to see a plant get diffused. Now, Alamau with the last kill. Team One, a very clean post plant there. It takes us to overtime.
Alamau was hugely influential in the way that that round went for Team One. I think he got at least 4 of those kills, something like that. And at the end, when it was just, Rare and Highs who were remaining, I couldn't help but my first thought be that, Rare has been one of the poorest performing players for Furia at the moment, and he's probably not who I would pick to have in my final 2 if I'm in a 2 versus 2, one of whom on the enemy team is Alamau, and he's playing like that. You could tell that a lot of the way that Furia had set themselves up in that round as well was specifically in anticipation of a smoke plant. You had Fantasy, who was placed upstairs on Jaeger, watching down through the floor, and Rare playing on the Warden as well meant that he would have been able to hand over a lot of that information should a smoke plant have been done. However, Lagonis, who was playing on the Ace, while he got the walls open, which is his primary job, he was actually killed before an attempted plant could be made. Now, he's the guy who's carrying the smoke, so once he's gone down, you can't anticipate a smoke plant anymore. At that point, Furia would have had to have considered amongst themselves, what we've predicted is going to happen is now not going to happen. We have to change how this is going to go. Team One are likely to get more aggressive. And that's what happened. Alamau did certainly get more aggressive. And Furia, I think, in trying to adapt and change the way that they were positioned and that they approached their defense, put them in positions where they weren't necessarily, protected by one another from that push that could be made in by Alamau. You put it in that 2 versus 2 situation at the end, the plant's already gone down, and you've got Alamau as one of the surviving players still. It was always going to lean towards Team One.
A clean slate here as we enter overtime. It looks as though Team One are going to attempt the same push we saw them attempt last time, which was this sort of solarium-sided master bedroom take. Now, the drones are coming in. There's quite a bit of information. That's actually going to be a drone that Neskin's got up high. Placed a bit like a Valkyrie camera or a default cam. Rare, ooh, just doesn't manage to hit his shots. Drones at his feet, so needs to watch himself there as there's wallbang shots being attempted onto him as well. These attackers are really starting to pile some pressure on. I'm going to force him to make a pretty full rotation there. Alamau now going to just send his drone up west main and just check to see which direction Rare actually rotated through. I imagine that he's going to get himself a safe route, go all the way up Library, and really try and get there for his team. As Team 1 are very focused on making this work.
Now remember, a lot of the reason the defenders retained control when they came to this site before is because of bringing Alamount down from that master bedroom window. It meant the attackers couldn't hold a crossfire while the plant was being made. Well, Alamount just went absolutely nuclear on that last round. And it's quite situational that things like that are allowed. First kill goes to Rare. That's Levy, who will be brought down. Again, we've spoken about how much a Nomad early kill can affect a round. Early in terms of relative to other kills, but not necessarily early in the round, as we're already in the final minute, and there's a decent chance that a lot of those air jabs were already placed. So there could still be that for the attackers at the very least, but you still can't deny that the defenders have the man advantage. In goes a nade. This could catch out Highs, but instead the ADS is going to catch the nade for him. That means he's still perfectly safe, ready for these final 30 seconds.
You know exactly where Highs is. He's got himself into a bit of a box, and there's a lot of angles being held on windows here, but it's really going to be on the side of Team 1 to make some sort of an entry. Fantasy going to shut down Lagonis as smoke canisters get tossed out from both sides. Rare finds his second onto Alamau, once again taking Alamau out of the equation in the final few seconds when attacking this site. KDS has to go huge from the other side, and he will before Lender steps on in. Neskin, he's got no real option here. The diffuser's cold. He knows that. He finds one. Highs gets the trade. Furia, round number 13.
You know, my MVP is
Rare.
Highs.
No, Rare got 2 kills.
Listen. It's not because Highs did anything. It's because the fact that Team 1 couldn't remove him is the sole reason why they couldn't push. If you go back and watch that round and you literally just clip together the parts of the feed where we just saw players from Team 1 trying to remove Highs from the box, or at least watching him, knowing that he's in there, that would probably be most of the round.
So
I mean, it was so much time that they tried to do that. The ADSs meant that the nades meant nothing. The angles being held onto him also meant nothing because he wasn't moving out of position. Meanwhile, the other players from Furia surrounding could clear up attackers, and you have this huge man disadvantage where it's just Neskin left at the end to try and do something, and you can't. That really key part of the map that they needed, which is where they attempted the plant last time they attacked onto it, was not clear, and they could not remove that one guy who all he had to do was sit there.
Okay, so we're in agreement. We'll give it to Fancy because he was playing the Jaeger.
Okay.
Highs could have won that round. He could have done the same thing if he'd have taken his hands off the keyboard, put him behind his head, just left himself on a right lead.
That's MVP material, Ollie.
It really is. That's all you've got to do sometimes in Siege. You just got to play your corner. That's exactly what we saw Highs doing. Furia have gotten themselves into the it's the second time, Furia have gotten themselves within 1 round of the game. Match point now for them here inside of overtime. Going to be attacking. We've seen attack not be the most favourable here tonight on Chalet, but it isn't impossible. I think time is likely going to be the issue again, as that was a big criticism we had of Furia, and it's kind of a sort of a comment to make of the map as a whole, is the amount of time that the attackers have spent in the attacking and, you know, really making use right up until those final 20 or so seconds have gone down, and not always through, you know, utility burn. We talk about 20-second meta, and that was because of a lot of utility that needed to be exchanged. This hasn't necessarily been that, as much as, you know, destroy the key pieces, so destroy the electroclaws, etc., and burn surrogates. But pushes have been just slow in general due to how much these defenders have been able to make rotation.
I did want to point out that, you know, when we saw Miracle put down that last air jab, he only had one left. Now, the question of how many air jabs Nomads have left by the time they die has come up a lot so far. So I just want to point out, air jabs have been placed. And actually, that air jab at the bottom of library stairs should be pretty influential. It means that the defender holding library stairs has to either go through it, they have to stay upstairs, or they have to jump down into Fireplace Hall, which leaves them way more exposed. Very simple air jab. It could be effective later on, and it could be one of those things that swings around. Levy will be the first one to fall, however, to Lender. As I mentioned, two former teammates going at it head-to-head. Team 1 really need to win this round, though, to take it to max OT, and already they're at the disadvantage.
Levy's struggling. I think that's 3 rounds in a row he's been opening death. Not something that you really want to be having, especially when you've been playing the Nomad on attack. And I mean, here as the oNe, there's an argument to say his utility's already been placed, but still no contribution in terms of kills. And this has been quite a nice gunfight game. We've seen some really snappy engagements and some standout performances from players on either side that have heavily shifted the tide. Toxic Babe canister going to get tossed out now as Alamau will fall. So if he gets converted, that's going to be no more Toxic Babes. And Highs sends the nade in. And that's going to do exactly that. 30 seconds and a 5 versus 3 is favourable here for these attackers. Miracle! What a headshot over onto Lagonis. But KDS has stepped up to the plate. He said, no, not today. And that's put the diffuser cold on the ground. Neskin finds another. And at the drop of a hat, we're all equal. It's 2 versus 2. And there's only 11 seconds left. Miracle could try and cover this now. The C4 gets shot out beautifully midair. Lender gets himself back into a position to plant. Miracle, all you've got to do is try and cover this diffuse going down. The time was at 0-0. Neskin aggressively pushes on in. Team 1 taking us all the way here, Gio.
Okay, we're going into max OT, lads. Team 1 needed to claw their way back in, and they absolutely did that in that last round. Got to give a huge shout out to Miracle, though. He had some really good plays in that round. Beautiful headshot, great control. It's a pressurizing situation to be the one guy on your own trying to cover a plant, especially when you got a C4 just flying in through the air, heading straight for your planter's head, and you could shoot it out of the air. You decide to change what direction you're holding it from. That's a risk in and of itself. And Neskin as well, just getting that final kill. Here's that beautiful headshot from Miracle. Oh, just in case you needed the little cheeky zoom in. There's the C4 as well. And just fantastic.
It's a big shame, isn't it? You've got to kind of ask the question of why Miracle changed his line of attack. Because from where he was covering, to my eye, that is an untrained, unprofessional eye. It looks as though you can need to do from that position, that doorway, just hold on and cover the plant going down. But he made the decision to move, and I'm not saying that's directly what resulted in the kill coming in. He was essentially in a 2 versus 1 because as somebody is planting the diffuser when the timer is at 0, they are, for all intents and per game, they're out of the game for 7 seconds until they have planted that diffuser, and then the clock kicks back up again. But until that point, the game is essentially in a state of pause. So it was a strange decision from the outside looking in for Miracle to change up where he was holding there. But it was all that Team 1 needed to give them an opportunity, and they took that opportunity with 2 hands. KDS went huge. He grabbed a load of kills on the backside as the push was coming through from sort of the fireplace, and KDS was holding fort and stopping that being a 2-pronged attack there from FURIA, which would have just been deadly. Now we see ourselves into maximum overtime. Side switched again, allowing FURIA on the defense. Really is all to play for here.
I mean, if I had to ask you, who do you think is going to win this round, would you have a really solid idea?
No, I wouldn't even pit it on the defenders at this point, because we've seen the rounds go either way. We're seeing certain individuals pop off in certain aspects. I'd like to see Levy stay alive a little bit longer here. I'm sure he'd like it as well, as he's not really seen much playtime in the last 3 rounds, as he's been taken out quite early. But there's no clear indicator here, and the only thing that is really clear, Gio, is that Team 1 are playing again later on this afternoon, and they've just played a maximum OT.
It's exhausting. I'm glad they changed the schedule slightly. Originally, they were meant to play MIBR directly after this game, but I think if I were them, I'd be exhausted if that were me. But either way, it's going all right for them so far. Just got to finish out this next round. Lagonis is waiting to have a go on the wall. There we go. Finally not going to be electrified.
That's been pretty typical timing as well. We've seen that wall opened regularly in and around the 1 minute, 1 minute 15, 1 minute 20 sort of mark. So Team 1 by no means lagging behind here. But they've still got a lot of work to do. There's upstairs yet to clear. If there's any angles that can be held vertically, I'm sure that they will become apparent sooner rather than later as well. KDS once again in that dangerous position, but the long-range shots are coming in now. As whilst that line of sight has been opened, it's almost giving the defenders a little bit of a focus here. We're going to see some utility exchanged as Fantasy is still playing upstairs in piano. Could do looking to make that rotation off out. Alamau could be a dangerous factor. He's going to now challenge onto Trophy, but gets sat down by Lender. Potentially an outside Valkyrie camera providing a bit of information there or something. That was a huge kill nonetheless. Once again, it means that the pressure coming in from the back is no longer a thing. Kill's going to trade in either direction, and the most important one is onto Lagonis, as he had the diffuser and was looking to try and get it planted. Now a desperate attempt to try and recover said diffuser and push on into the site. Lender and Highs come up big with the kills. FURIA, they are going to take that maximum overtime round and the game.
It looked shaky during the middle of that game, but FURIA just showing towards the end how much they have to offer. Team 1 didn't have the best attack on that last round, and I think having the opening death as well certainly didn't help. FURIA have been looking for that proof that they can stay in the top 4 here in the BR6, and